Change is scary. Change is scary, and like it really taps into this idea that I want us to work with, that when change is happening, it's not that anything is wrong, right? It's that something's shifting. And while we might really want change, there is something happening on a much deeper level in our subconscious mind that is inhibiting us from really enjoying the process. And it's going to cause a lot of fear. It's going to cause a lot of emotions to come up. And so, what I want to do is just quickly take a step back and look at how the subconscious mind functions. I know for people who have been with me for many of these classes, this might be, just a brief overview, but it's important, right? As we lay the foundational work. Your mind is made into two parts. There's the conscious mind, which is your logic, your reason, your willpower, your deductive reasoning. And it makes up about 5% of your mind. And we use it about 90% of the day. Then you get into the subconscious mind. Now, your subconscious mind makes up your primitive way of being. It makes up your emotions, your behaviors, your coping mechanisms, belief systems. And from the moment that you're born until today, everything is being learned through association. And what does that mean? So it means that you have an experience, right? You're not born with a fear of dogs or a fear of getting into a car accident. Those things are all learned through experiences that we have. And experiences can be anything from watching a movie to living a real life trauma, a big trauma, right? Where maybe you get into a car accident, or a little trauma, right? Where it's like, maybe you hit the brakes really short and it startled you and it really created this anxiety for you going forward. And not everything has to be these big monumental moments, but this is how our mind formulates. So if we look at a fear of dogs, you're going to have this anxiety when you see a dog. You're going to have this behavioral reaction: fight, flight, freeze. And the logical mind will kick in afterwards to go, well, but it's a dog, it's behind a fence, it's on a leash. But you're going to have that primary response first and foremost before the logic is going to kick in. And so, one thing that the mind really dislikes, and this is, the mind really dislikes the unknown. So, when we're going through change, when we're moving from one place or a closure, or a job shift, a relationship shift, a new home, moving, whatever it might be, you're moving from a very known quantity to something new. And we don't know what to expect. And so that's where the mind is going to begin to spiral out. And what it will do is it will look at the past and try to borrow from the past to make sense of the future, to go, well, if if my last apartment and the move went okay, then maybe this next move will go okay. Or maybe it went horribly and it's going to go, what am I going to need to know? What am I going to have to prepare for? And it begins to get a little bit of anxiety and stress around the situation. And so, what we want to do when we work with change is to really begin to understand it, that change is meant to be scary because it's the unknown, but it doesn't have to feel scary to the subconscious mind. And how do we navigate that? And because we are going through not only this very big shift in the cosmos, but we're also going through a lot of closures right now. We are letting things go. We are seeing things for what they are. We're asking ourselves, what do I want for the next 10 years? What do I want to manifest today? What do I want to manifest tomorrow? It's one thing to want things, it's another thing to believe you can have them. And so that's the difference between wishing and hoping toward really believing and trusting. And so that really requires us, again, if you want to go back to the manifestation class that I taught in the first 12-week series, that manifestation class, it's like we need to tap into those belief systems. What is coming up that's making you think you can't have these? And so change, we want to go, what is it that's telling you that change has to be scary? What are you planning for that is causing you to have hesitation? And how can we troubleshoot that? How can we trust that you're going to figure it out? How do we rely on your confidence, your intuitiveness, your ability to reason and logic and go through things? How can we pull up that confidence? And where else do you feel confident that we can borrow from those moments in your life and overlay them here? But we want to learn, how do we move through stress? right? And how do we move through change? So, okay, great. I'm just checking in on the comments. I'm glad everyone can hear me and see me. Thank you for letting me know because I never know. I could just be sitting here yabbering on, which has happened. So, thank you for letting me know. Okay. So, given that there's a lot of change and closures and openings and plannings and emotions coming up right now, how might you be feeling? Right. Sometimes it's hard to even identify the emotions that are coming up, but here are a couple of them that you might recognize and go, that sounds like me, that feels like me, or maybe it doesn't, and that's okay too. These are just commonalities, they are not finitely true. So maybe you're feeling a bit off, maybe not completely like yourself recently. You're restless, but you're really not sure what. That comes up a lot when it's sort of like we want to get going, but we're not sure where we're supposed to be going, right? It's kind of like waking up on a Saturday going, I have the whole day to do whatever I want. And then it's like, wait a minute, but what do I want? And then you kind of stall out. And that happens to me all the time. I'm like, I have too much time. I don't know what to do. But because I'm a productive person, I want to do more and I want to do things, but then I get into indecisiveness. So you might want answers or clarity right now. But again, as the cosmos are saying, that clarity might not be here yet. So we have to sit like with that discomfort, that emotional, uh, I guess, non clarity, and tolerate this emotion of what is coming next. And is that okay? We might begin to overthink the small things. When we have anxiety, we tend to make mountains out of molehills. We turn them into these big things. It gives us something to worry about. And sometimes there's a benefit to worrying, and sometimes they're not. So you might feel more emotional or sensitive than usual. Again, that's that energy that's coming up. Allow yourself, be compassionate, be tender. This is an emotional time. Question yourself or your decisions. Indecisiveness comes when we can get stuck between what am I supposed to be doing and what should I be doing. Maybe you're torn between holding on and letting go. Should I stay? Should I go? I don't know. What if? There's a lot of anxiety that comes with closure. And I always beg to ask people, you're allowed to change your mind. And sometimes we just need to make the decision that right now, am I coming or am I going? Am I staying or am I letting go? And then see how that feels. Get through the next hour, get through the next day. You're allowed to change course. Life is about, it's like sailing. You're just going to keep pivoting and keep going forward and forward, learning and growing. Pardon me, I'm still recovering from being a little sick. So maybe you want control when things feel unclear. And that makes sense because the mind doesn't like to sit in the unknown. Are you mentally tired? Are you drained? I know that I get really drained when I don't know what I'm doing, and it makes me quite uptight and sometimes even anxious. But underneath it all, I hope you can recognize that there is this quiet sense that something is changing. And if we can see that in a positive view, then that's where our power comes in, right? We do get a choice of do we want to see the glass half full or half empty? And to sit with it either way is fine. We just want to go, how is that serving me? How is it not? Okay. So, why is change hard? We talked about how the subconscious mind is structured. But what happens when our subconscious doesn't have a outlook or a view or a picture or a thought or an image of what the future looks like? It brings up a lot of fear. So, let's talk about fear really briefly. Fear, you felt it. It's a natural response. Our job is not to eliminate fear or eradicate fear. Because think about it, if you got rid of all fear and there's a burning building that you're in, you want a little bit of fear. Y- You want it to push you forward, to get you moving, to get you out of there. It's that catabolic energy that's going to break things down so that you can get the energy to get up and going. But there's a point where fear becomes irrational, and that's the part that we wanna begin to buffer in, is to give a face, a picture, a identity, a known to the uncertainty in our lives. And once we do that, right, because the mind works in pictures and images, um, we can begin to embody it, right? There's that saying, that wonderful saying, seeing is believing. And sure, there's a lot of stuff that we're not going to believe, but if we can build a picture of what the future can look like, that feels even possible just a little bit, where you could see yourself having that or doing that or feeling a certain way in the future, your mind is going to go, that feels good. I can step into this. I want that. Let me try it on. Let me embody it. Let me, first, sometimes we'll start with a third party vision of, I want you to imagine seeing yourself on stage, doing a presentation and feeling really empowered. And what does that empowered stance look like, right? And maybe you're seeing it third party, but the question is, can we then step into that power and really embody it fully so that now you're the one looking out from the stage into the audience? And this is where the subconscious mind is either going to accept or reject. We're going to try those things on. And then we're going to play with the images. We're going to play with, where does the fear come up and how do I manipulate that? How do I let my mind know that it's safe? Because remember, your mind doesn't care if you're happy. Sure, it's great to be happy, but it does not care if you're happy. It cares if you're safe. So safety above all else. And that is what our fear is trying to do, is to keep us safe. So we want to thank our fear, but let it know that we're here and we're going to take care of it. So when we're talking about fear, fear can come from a couple different places, but I want to talk about stress, right? And how stress causes fear in our life. Now, when we are not under stress, if I strip away everything in your life and I put you in a white box, just you're going to have a certain energy. Maybe it's the energy of a caregiver. Maybe you're very creative. Maybe, we want to know who you are in your perfect, non stress state. And we're going to understand your belief systems, your core values, what you like, the things that bring you joy, the things that don't. And we're going to be okay with all of that. Now, when I have you in your energy, in you, purely authentic, genuine you, there is another circle around you, which is you in relation to. And this is physical things, right? Like my pants. How do my pants make me feel today? If they're too tight, that is a physical stressor. Or maybe you're sick. That is a physical stressor. Emotional. Am I having spiraling thoughts? Am I going through a traumatic incident? Mental, right? What am I thinking about? Environmental. Is my house filled with mold and it's causing me to feel sick? Is the weather really crummy? All of these things are things that we want to look at that push pressure on us, our relationships, our family, our friends. So sorry. So gross being sick. Um, so we want to look at all of these things that cause us stress, and we want to give ourselves a little bit of credit that we don't, the job is not to eliminate fear and stress. We can't do it. I'm sorry to tell you. It's how do we navigate through it with the least amount of pain and the shortest duration of time. And that's the goal, because you are going to get stressed. You are going to have physical stressors. You are going to have relational stressors. You are going to have financial stressors at time, time stressors, right? Oh my God, there's just not enough time in the day. All of these things are real. But what we want to do is to understand, who do we become when those happen? And typically, people are either going to become what we call the victim energy. And that doesn't mean that you're a victim. I know it's a triggering word, but it means that you're the effect of life, right? It's when we're going to feel things like guilt, shame, embarrassment, sadness, depression. We tend to go inward. And these are very heavily ego driven states. And then there are going to be the other times when we have a little bit more action potential and we go into anger and frustration, resentment, right? Fear is there in both of these energies when stress pushes in on us, but one of them has a little bit more action potential, anger, because you're more likely to do something about it. And you can go from one to the other. Some people are going to get angry and then they're going to feel horrible that they got angry and they're going to dip into the guilt and the frustration, the guilt and the sadness, or you're going to go guilt, sadness, and then you're going to be like, wait a minute, someone else was part of this, and go into anger. And so you can switch back and forth. But I want people to understand that these are stress states. This is not who you are. This is who you become when you are under these stress factors that we're talking about. And so we want to begin to identify, what is it in my life that is pushing on me? And can I control that? What about that can I control or change to give myself a little bit more stability underneath me while I go through this? Or to give yourself just to know that you are in stress. Sometimes just acknowledging that can really help you move it forward. But the cosmos can cause stress, right? There are sometimes things that we're not even aware of that are going on that are going to be causing stress. And so if you can't really even identify it, give yourself permission to know that something else may be at play that's much bigger than you and to just settle, right? Release, surrender, just be for a moment. And sometimes when we can sit with it, that's where the power comes in. All right. So turning to trust, right? When there is something going on in our lives, it's very unsettling. I know they say that moving is one of the biggest stressors in life because, right, this idea of home, shelter, security, stability, having a place that is yours gets ripped out and turned upside down, right? Everything that you're purging, you're cleansing. I always say it's like cleaning out a closet. Life sometimes it gets really messy before it gets organized again. And so how do we get through these chaotic times when we are going through the process of change? And there is this idea of turning to trust. Now, trust is the ability to stay steady even when you don't have proof yet, right? It's putting yourself in the hands of what or whom. Um, I, this could be God, this could be the universe, this could be even yourself. Maybe it's putting your trust into a friend of yours. Because let's face it, there are things that people see within you that you don't see within yourself. And so when we are at sometimes our weakest or our most vulnerable or our most stressed and fearful, there are people who still see our genuine, authentic selves and they know that we can do it. And sometimes it's borrowing that trust from them to instill it to get us through these tougher moments. And we all have them. And so don't berate yourself or shame yourself. It's giving yourself permission to borrow that trust or to lean into the trust that, you know, everything happens for a reason. It sometimes feels like a very messed up reason. Um, but that there is something on the other side. And one thing that I like to remind people is that change is a process and to be patient as you go through the process. And because it's a process, you might look at how have I gone through? We're going to use the moving example. How did I go through my move last time, right? And while there was the really stress period, that was the day of, you're going to have a map of how to get through it. If you knew that was the process, maybe you'll feel better going through it again. So trust the process. The process is at the other end of everything. Take time out of it, right? Because time, as we just saw a minute ago, right? It is at the bottom here as a stress factor. Take time out of it. It could be a minute, it could be a week, it could be a year, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to have to go through it. So try to take this timing out of it and to trust it's all going to work out. I just need to go through it with the least amount of stress. And that comes from just knowing that I am grounded, I am centered, I am in control, and to lean on your support networks when necessary. Okay. So let's talk about sitting with emotions. Emotions demand to be felt. You've heard me talk about this a lot in the past, and it resonates true, and it always will. We are emotional beings. It is a gift, a blessing, and a curse all at the same time. Now, there are emotions that are so wonderful that when we feel them, we are ecstatic about it. We blossom, we bloom, we grow, we expand. And then there are these other emotions that are very hard to sit with. They are very hard to tolerate. And those are things like shame, embarrassment, guilt. We sit with them, even sometimes anger, right? Not the outward expression and action of anger, but the experience of anger. And they can be very scary and they can be very painful. The questions become how long do they last? How deep do they go? And that's very uncomfortable. And some people are very scared because let's face it, if you've ever been in a very deep depression, we certainly are going to question how long will this last and what happens to me. Maybe you've lost friends or maybe people have disconnected from you. Maybe people get angry because you stop showing up. And so we build fear around these emotions. But if we can look at them as other parts of ourselves, that we have a million parts of ourselves. And again, we have to ask, when are these parts coming out? Under what stressors and what stress factors, right? Is it a relationship just ended, and of course I'm depressed, of course I'm sad, of course, because this relationship is ended, it is causing me mental and emotional stress, and therefore I am in a stress state. But to sit with my depression or to sit with my sadness, my longing, it's very uncomfortable. And so one of the things I always invite people to do is to it's very hard to work on yourself, is to imagine these parts of you with you, right? You can close your eyes. It's like, if my sadness were here, if my lonely part were here, what would I want to do for them, right? How can I help them? How can I, instead of shaming them, we tend to find that what we do with these sad parts or these heavier parts is we berate them, right? Go away. They need to go away. They're so bad. Like, they're ruining my life. Um, we become intolerant of them, and that is where we get really tripped up, is telling them to go away. And that is the first step in unleashing them and unlocking them to move and flow, is to give them space to be here, right? It's like, allow that inner child, or allow your sadness to be here, right? We've all seen, oh gosh, what's the movie, the Disney movie with all the different emotions? Sadness, at the end of the day, everyone wants her to go away, but she's actually quite useful for empathy and love and so much more. So it's giving space to these things, and emotions, to sit with them. And once you can understand what they need, how they're feeling without berating them, we can then find out what it is they need and how we can move forward, giving them the choice of, it's okay today. If you want to just be sad, let's be sad. And then maybe tomorrow we'll feel better. Or what would it be like to be angry, to get a little more action potential, not to act on it necessarily, but anger can be very empowering, as I mentioned before. But we want to learn to sit with our emotions and to tolerate them in these times of change. That if we trust that they will pass, if we trust that we're meant to feel them so we can heal them, if you were your own best healer, what would change for you today? If you knew you could handle them, how would that shift things for you? And how would that change the way you approach this process that we're going through right now, the gap in between what is letting go of and what is coming? Because I promise you, the story, if I told you the whole story of how this all plays out, it's not really that exciting. Can we be excited about all the things that can be, not all the things that might cause us anxiety? There's a lot there.